Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is a very important meeting as it follows the Knowledge Seekers workshops on Thursday and the Brazilian community's presentation on Fridays. And it's because we have so many people from around the world supporting this particular channel. So we really appreciate that. Of course, there's a lot that's going on, and it's very hard to keep up with everything. So we're going to try and see what we can do to make it easier for, shall we say, digest things in bite-sized pieces. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute teachings on plasma science. We're still in the advanced nanotech phase. We're discussing awareness. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is August the 10th, 2025. This is part of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. So we have been trying to condense this, and it's kind of getting unwieldy, simply because we've been broadcasting for over 11 years. And we have thousands and thousands of hours of teaching. So what we're trying to do is to condense it in such a way that it makes it attractive for newcomers, and it also keeps it interesting for mature knowledge seekers. Because the fact of the matter is that the mature knowledge seekers are burdened with the responsibility of having to introduce to the new knowledge seekers. And frankly, as you can see, we've been doing this for years, and we have to remember what it was like at the beginning when we didn't know much. So we have learned a lot and introduced a lot of new points of view, and that's primarily what we're going to talk about today, because there is a movement underfoot, and we call it awareness. It is actually getting easier from my point of view. It is getting easier to talk to people about the Keshe Foundation. It's easier to introduce the books of Marantepa Keshe, such as book number 1, The Universal Order of Creation of Matters. People are trying to understand, why does that matter to their tiny perfect world? And is our world so tiny and so perfect because we know how fast the light travels? And then in book number 2, we see there's a structure of the light. So things are giving a different perspective, aren't they? And then book number 3, the most shocking of all, The Origin of the Universe, which sees the splitting of the origin of the universe into man's universe and their sister universe. So this is actually uncharted territory for most of us. And we're still having trouble dealing with only our universe. And actually, we're not even dealing with our universe. We're just dealing with that tiny spot we call Earth space. And as such, I'm not bragging about our handling of Earth space. So we, as the members of the Universal Council, along with Rick Crammond, have for 390 weeks in a row brought the One Planet, One Nation, One Race for Justice and World Peace to understand that we're all part of the humanity race and our home is the Earth space, and as such, we're all on the same team. So it's confounding to understand why we're all fighting for this tiny little planet, and we see that the whole vast universe is out there. And our problem, of course, is that we are dealing in small schemes, and we don't understand the plasma rule, which is the higher strength feeds the weaker strength, not eats the weaker strength. Either way, it's a conflict point, but in plasma science, we call it a binding zone because it brings two fields together. And then we have a new picture, a new manifestation, and we call this the inertia density manifestation. So this particular point is what the nanotech series is really all about, is to understand these inertia points and how they are created. So we like to delve in the business of life, and many people think of that as a financial thing. So we have bookkeepers with respect to that. But when we look at the business of life, we have to look at the author of that book of life, and we have to understand that the way we balance our budgets or we balance our statements, we have the income and expenses, and that gives us our profit. But if we look at the universal context, there's a gravitational income that's incoming, and the minus the magnetical expense, that's the outgoing, and that equals your inertia point, which is what you're left with. And what you're left with is an important point because there is an equal and opposite point to balance things out. Because in accounting, the books need to be balanced, while in life, the rules are the same. So we're talking about awareness, and many people refer to the herd mentality of people because we see how animals herd together, or fish schools, and birds flock. But with respect to the people, so the question is, who awakens the people? And we see that Big Brother is really watching us and is promoting fear mongering. And so this relationship to this concept of a herd mentality, we try and relate it to a hive of bees. But, frankly, they are very industrious, or a herd of cattle, and, safety in numbers there, or a gaggle of geese. And if you ever watch how the geese migrate, you find that they do not like to leave their stragglers behind, and they work diligently to bring everyone together. So one goose brings the gaggle, and the gaggle brings more. And what about the organization of ants? And we refer to them as an army of ants. But this is not an army that is destructive. This is an army that is, again, very industrious. So you kind of look at it and say, well, how come these are all single-minded, and how come we're having this little problem? Well, we are going into a heightened perception. So we're talking about awareness, and this is a movement towards what we call an awakened state. That awakened state is not kind of where you just open your eyes and you blink and you rub your eyes to have a good view. It is the point of view. So our point of view has been brought up within our society to be a self-serving physicality point of view. So what we see and often referred to is what we get, but what we get is not exactly what we see because we're only seeing part of the picture. So the awareness that we're referring to has to do with understanding that our point of view is challenged. It is limited. And this is unfortunate because it leads to energy binding, which is important. That binding is self-serving. That's important. And that becomes an important dimensional focal point. It's when we do it at the expense of others who have the same self-serving needs. So, how is it that we are practicing on a daily basis? And when I say the collective we in our society, where we lie, cheat, steal from others, and so our prosperity, if you will, is at the expense of others. And it's confounding to understand why we're taking from the lowest common denominator when the highest common denominator is giving unconditionally. So we seem to be settling for the not only the smallest pie, but the smallest piece of the pie. And this is where, we refer to the fallen angels who are seeking gold. And the gold is related to what we call the angular density. It involves the falling. This is the fallen angels. So when we see things falling out of the sky, we know that they're increasing in density, they're increasing in pressure, and they're increasing in their gravity. And there's an equation called angular momentum equals the moment of inertia times the angular velocity. But we have to remember that angular momentum is conserved. So when we arrive at an answer, if you will, for this equation, we're only seeing half the picture. And so all what we see is the gold that glitters, and we become the fallen angels as a result of that. And now we are at this turning point where we see that there is a source for this service. So this turning point, are we turning back or are we turning forward? And it all depends our point of view with respect to this binding energy. So the thing about the hive mind, if you will, is that it has a common purpose. So if we have this common purpose, then we have this hive binding action. And you say, okay, well, so that renders us all as little worker bees. And that is a concept that is very, very simplistic because we are the most complex organism on this planet. And that renders us a capability that is unique. So we're not grounded like plants, and we're not herded like animals, and we are not restricted to the surface of the earth. But we have been given guidelines. Someone decided to give us the guidelines. So we see the Ten Commandments of Moses, for instance, and then we see the Keshe Foundation's completion of the missing commandments. But basically, they govern how we live. And when we say govern, it's to, incorporate our moral attitude and our social attitude. And we see that these are good rules to follow. And we assume that everybody's following the same rules. And of course, those who wrote the rules are also following them. But the most important rule, and it's kind of a universal rule, is thou shalt not lie. And this becomes very, very important because their lying involves deception. And then the worst kind of deception, of course, is self-deception. So when we think that we can write the rules and then we can choose whether or not we follow the rules, and the rules are, from our point of view of physicality, then we are basically myopic. We need to understand that there's more. And so our point of view is grounded in the most simplistic terms and, in fact, in the most unstable terms. And this is where the so-called firmness of our convictions is grounded and is not firm at all. It is highly contrived. So, imagine if trees had a point of view. Trees are physical, but they don't have any commandments. So, but they do have binding energy. And interestingly enough, they don't fight. And they have a forest kind of mind. So the vertical people seem to be well organized. And they are doing the things that are kind of outlined with the commandments and don't have the problems that humanity does. And of course, they don't need the kind of vitality enhancement that we need. And as we understand our vitality, it's embedded in our emotional vitality and our physical vitality. And it is underperforming. And the main reason is because of our physical point of view, where we dominate this planet, as opposed to working with this planet. We want to dominate our universe instead of understanding that we came from the universe, instead of understanding that the universe is giving unconditionally. So why are we deceiving ourselves with putting artificial limits on our understanding? We don't have to do that. It's all there. But when you're pursuing equality the way we're doing with respect to our self-serving binding energy, then some people consider themselves more equal. And that's kind of the way that prevents us to get to the transmutation highway, you see, because that's why we're stuck down on the transmission highway, which is the lowest energy state. And so we all want to elevate to a higher energy state, such as the transition state. And we see that there is a pattern, starts with carbon 12, it moves up to carbon 14, and then the transmutation highway moves up to carbon 16. And you say, well, where do these highways lead, and how can we play in these? And why are we still groveling in the lowest energy state? So where we are now is at the point of awareness that there are other energy states. And if that is the case, then shouldn't we be altering our point of view? And there is a movement underfoot of altering our point of view, because our point of view is grounded in the success of our physicality. And success is a word that is actually questionable, because there are many parts of this world that are really not representative of what we call the success of humanity on this planet. So we had to bring on the cups of life. And we did this during the pandemic, but we didn't call them the cups of the pandemic because what we were introducing was the nanocoding process of the monatomic science. So we're in the advanced nanotech aspect of it to understand that there is an inner space and that there's an emotional strength and there's a physical strength and there's a position within space, and we occupy that space at some nebulous point. But it isn't one point. It is a changeable point. We can move around. And as we can move around, why not look at the cups of life and the Gans radiation manifestation of many different Ganses, such as carbon dioxide, calcium, zinc, copper, water, and amino acid, and now gold. Wow. So we have different Ganses that can be manifest. And so we see why there's so much abundance on this earth, because the Earth space is doing this from Earth space point of view, and our point of view from a point of physicality and how we occupy the Earth space is the only Earth space point of view that we recognize. And yet the vertical people seem to have different points of view. And then we understand that everything has a soul. So when we bring together the third cup of life, which is the cup of the soul, and we understand that each cup has a magnetical gravitational relationship and a soul, that gives it the full three dimensions. But when we bring these together, the emotional cup, the physical cup, and the cup of the soul, collectively, well, now we have a magnetical and gravitational relationship and a collective soul. So if we understand that pattern, then we can understand that from a mental point of view, which is still part of our physical point of view, isn't it? Because we all have a brain, and we find that there are two hemispheres of that brain, and they kind of work together again, like the copper GANs and the zinc GANs and the carbogen. And so we have three dimensions that come together to create this three-dimensional universe that we have a physical point of view of, and yet we are able to do more because 1 and 1 is more than 3, because we still have the 1. It doesn't stop coming. And the 3 is just the bringing together of these three fields. And so this is the concept that we have to understand in the awareness. When we're talking about success, we have to look at the grand central station of Earth Ganses and the success that the Earth space has achieved. So it has Ganses for every single mineral on the periodic table of elements. And we were demonstrating this in Beijing on May the 10th. And we were beyond that now, where we were able to create gold. So that is the gold in the physicality. We don't have to dig for it anymore. And men are not the only gold diggers. So this is going to really change our understanding of life, because the way we are with respect to gold digging is what we call loosh harvesting. And loosh, of course, is the energy of life. And so when we are bound and determined to enhance our physical point of view, then it activates our single-minded intention. So how does that progress to this hive mind intention? And is that hive mind just a simple mind that, just does the bidding of what the queen bee is interested in? Or can we operate as individuals, unique individuals, with our variable intentions, and still function within what we call the collective awareness? Well, that's the question that we were looking at today. So if we look at the nano alignment, and we're talking about the nanotech, and we see how the carbon nanocrystals can align themselves in a field and create this separation of a magnetical and a gravitational relationship. And then the gravitational field becomes the inertia point to facilitate this nano alignment. But that is just a twinity, where we have 2 points of the nanotech, or we've even extended 2 points of the picotech, or 2 points of the star tech, if you will, which is more advanced. But either way, it's the twinity of the nanotech, which means that a relationship has to be established between 2 points in order for us to have a point of view. Because you can't have a point of view with no relationship. Well, what's your point of view? Well, about what? Is it about cars? Is it about women? Is it about business? What is your point of view? No, just general point of view. And so many people just go through life with their ambition is to have ambition. That's it. And wouldn't it be nice? But when we look at the science and we see that there are many orders of magnitude of relationships, and each of these relationships create a MAGRAV condition. That is to say, if we're looking at above one, we go into, say, giga, which is 10 to the power of 9. And then we have nano, which is 10 to the power of minus 9. Or we go into tera, which is the power of 12. We counteract that with pico, which is 10 to the minus 12. So, as I say, so above, so below, but, what we're looking at is a balance. And then each point becomes a turning point, and there are multiple turning points. So, this is the uniqueness of life on this planet. We have a bountiful point of reference. And to understand these points of reference, we have to understand that they are all operating at different energy levels as well. So within a particular energy level, we can have multiple turning points. We can transcend to other energy levels and have multiple turning points. So this is the spice of life. We call it variety. So it is all based, of course, on the MAGRAV energy transfer state. So what we're saying is that there's a balanced energy transfer state, and that transfer state can go anywhere it wants to. So it can stay on one level, like a GAN state, or it can migrate from state to state. So let's say it could have a balanced state from the GAN state on one side to the atomic state on another side. Or it can go from the nano state to the GAN state. So we are looking at the conservation of inertia. In other words, both sides of the equation play a part, and both sides of the equation are a point of convergence, and both sides of the equation have a degree of susceptibility, which allows for an input of energy or a depletion of energy. So when we're looking at building dimensions, we start with a point, and we add a second, and we connect one, we add a third and connect two, and we add a fourth and connect three. And so we're just in an undifferentiated state. So, okay, so now we're building 3 dimensions. But these 3 dimensions create a star formation where now we have a magnetical reference and a gravitational reference. So we're still undifferentiated in respect to that. We're just discussing something nebulous here. But depending on the relationship of this star formation, there is a GANS that is produced in the core. And so we could say that that GANS would be differentiated. We can't determine it from this context because we don't see the relationship. And this is the point. Just because we don't see it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. The point is that this manifestation in the core is created as a result of this relationship. So that relationship exists whether you see it or you don't. And that is a totally different point of view. So when we look at this star point, we say, okay, well, there's a magnetical reference and a gravitational reference. Well, the magnetical is a point of view, and the gravitational is a point of view. So that's 2 points of view. So our physicality with respect to Earth space is gravitational. And that's the only point of view that the majority of us give an account of. And we say, well, that's the point of view. But then when we look at the GANS containment, which is in the core, which is more gravitational, Now we have another point of view. Well, and where does that fit in? So if you were only looking at the physical point of view, we are really missing a big part of the show. So the star component is the magnetical gravitational relationship. That's at the core. Then we have to have a relationship to another star core. And then we can determine the polarity. So when we see that these star cores come together, that also represents 2 points of view. The star core has a point of view, which is a product of the magnetical gravitational relationship, and the other star core has the same. So when we compare one star core to another star core, then we can identify 2 points of view. So now we find that these are now binding points. So it looks like when these binding points, they are arbitrary points of view, but they are showing loose ends. And the only reason they're loose is because we don't see the other part of the picture. So they're apparent terminal ends. So our arbitrary point of view is just from where we're sitting, and we're forgetting that there are other points of view. So the important thing to understand is that there's a dynamic plasma relationship, right? So it's this Earth space point within this Earth space field. That is the basic point of view. And that's a convergence of the horizontal transmission with the vertical transition. So that would be one part of the relationship. So when we're doing a core analysis, like a lot of geologists would do, they would do an assay, take a core sample by cutting through the various layers. Well, each of these layers is an overlapping turning point. So we see our analysis is based on being able to cut through all these layers and then have an overview of what transpired. Well, what did transpire was there was a North Pole point of view and a South Pole point of view, and then an equator point of view. And that only identifies the fact that there are 3 points of view. So when we maintain the one point of view, the physicality, well, that's kind of like our core sample. So all we can identify is what we see. But we can't say, well, where did it come from? And why is one layer on top of another layer? Well, we can accept that, but which layer is on top of the other layer, and which layer is next to the other one? And who did the choosing? And, who's the designer behind this? And so when we look at these inertia points, which is what it is, so we look at a gravitational magnetical relationship being one point of view of 2 points of view, and then the gravitational inertia point between these 2 star core inertia points being that turning point, which is the manifestation points of view. So 2 points of view on one hand, 2 points of view on the other hand, coming together in a gravitational inertia point, which is another manifestation point of view. We didn't say it's physical. We didn't say it's plasmatic. It's another point of view. So why are we fixated on this physical point of view? So each point of view is an inertia point, and that inertia point is part of a containment. So we have overlapping connections and overlapping points, and we're able to differentiate our inertia points. But we have to understand that We have to identify the relationship between them. And then there's something that's unseen. And this is what causes the differentiation. So we just can't say that that's the point of view because that's the differentiation. That's what we see. But what we don't see is what caused that. And we need to take that into account. And the challenge is on, definitely. So as a hive mind, then we have an inertia point of that hive where we bring together the one-dimensional or two-dimensional or three-dimensional, or shall we just say the star-dimensional. But really, it's the observer dimensional point of view, isn't it? Because each member of the so-called hive has an individual point of view. I think that description is a whole lot different of what we see with the performance of bees in a hive, or an army of ants, or a school of fish. So a school of fish goes together, but not all fish operate in schools. So something changes that. Something changes from that inertia point hive into an observer dimension. Not hive-like at all. And yet, we have this awareness problem. This concept of duality has to come in. So we talk about 2 points that work in tandem as a partnership. And so we have this inertia point containment, and we have that reference that we were talking about that was unseen. So these now become the 2 reference points of view. And then we extend that further, then we see that the magnetical gravitational relationship is based on the relationship between natural creation and natural decay. But on one side is the inertia point of creation, and on the other side is the inertia point of decay. And so that creates a maggrav relationship. So there is a bonding layer. There is a boundary between the 2. And we can't see it, so we don't acknowledge it. So we just kind of fudge those details. Well, we're getting close to the point where we have to take account of these particular details because our awareness is growing. You see, it's actually growing in intensity. So that it grows within a range, and it grows with attention. And so within is intention, but without is extension. So the balance between intention and extension is this hive tension, this hive bonding. And so we say, well, many tents create a hive, but humanity's goals are, shall we say, of a larger scheme, where we can intensify and extensify what we are. So this is a feature of our inertia point herding. So when we look at how atoms and molecules come together, we find that there's always a relationship at the bonding point that is gravitational in nature. And in order to have bonding points that go in different dimensions, then we have to have these gravitational magnetical relationships. And each of these points become a turning point. And so we see multiple turning points. So we're starting to have an awareness that our singular point of view, and if it's only physical, is from our singular point. And yet, each of us is an independent variable, and each of us has a singular point of view. Well, how does that work? So we find that we were all created as part of the manifestation coming from the carbon inertia highways, the various highways. And so we see that there are multiple turning points. And we don't see the other multiple turning points, which are part of the rest of the universe. So for practical purposes, we need to acknowledge that they exist. And so this becomes the elevation of our awareness. We don't have to understand how they exist, but we have to acknowledge that they exist, because from our physical point of view is actually a manifestation point of awareness. So the creation of that manifestation point awareness is not from our point of view, but from another point of view. And so here we are, shall we say, in the eye of a hurricane, where we find that things we depend on, like words, well, they don't matter because we can't hear the words. Or we set up a hierarchy. There is no hierarchy in equality. Or we create this false detachment. Well, you cannot extricate yourself from the universe. Also, maybe we have this holographic universe, which is giving us a different point of view. Well, in the eye of the hurricane is the calm. And to get there, the wind blew in one direction. And to get to the other side, the wind is going to blow in another direction. So now we have an awareness of our point of view. It all depends on which way we're going, doesn't it? So we are at that point, what we call a residency, where we have a specific location and a specific state. And we can follow a specific tracking, and also we can enlist a filtering. So we can maintain that positioning. And maintaining that positioning gives us the kind of consistency that we need to create our base. And so our base of view is actually that turning point. But we're not just a flat rotating disk, but we have polar points where now we have rotating fields. So they're extending in all sorts of different directions. And every point on this field is an inertia point. And so that's why we have many different independent variables, because we're all maintaining our position. However, we all follow the basic rules where the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So regardless of where we are in this universe, that rule applies. So why are we shortchanging ourselves, isn't it? Because what the soul is doing is positioning itself at the crossroads of what we see, of what we hear, of what we smell, and of what we think. And so this gives us an inertia feeding vision and a plasmatic symbiosis, because we're bringing all of these facilities and sensibilities together to create a fullness in the picture of our point of view. Well, that means when we're looking at our hive mind and we're saying, okay, well, we all have to kind of think together. Well, we are thinking together. And the problem is that we've abdicated our decision making. We've abdicated our health decisions to our medical. We've abdicated our social decisions to our governments. We've abandoned our defense capabilities to militaries. So we've really abdicated all of our responsibilities, and we just, don't want to be involved. Well, we cannot not be involved, because you cannot extricate yourself from the universe, because from wherever you are the observer, and that is your present point of view. And if you choose to limit that, then you don't see the rest of the picture. So as our brain has two hemispheres, and as we say, so above, so below, we find that this transcendence into heaven is really a transcendence in our point of view, because we are in heaven. The earth was our heaven. Why do you think we came here? There's no other reason to come here if we are coming to a place that we want to come to. We didn't go to Mars. We didn't go to Jupiter. We were born on this planet. So it's unfortunate that this planet is experiencing limited points of view from so many. So this is where the awareness is coming in, to understand that we now have a different kind of transfer state that is manifesting. So the transition matter has three dimensions, the X, Y, and Z axis. And then it has another track of X, Y, and Z axis, which is another transition matter. And the relationship of one to the other has to be where one is negative and one is positive. So the accumulation of that becomes your negative positive junction. And so that transfer state can be dispensed as a NP junction transfer state, a finished package. So we create one, and we create two. And that two could be a package that can move. And that package in its movement is going to alter awareness manifestation. Many of us, carry our emotions on our sleeves, so we have an emotional reaction. Our posture will change physically with awareness. Even our facial features will change, whether you're happy or you're angry. Of course, your body temperature will change. Depends on, whether you're red-faced or calm. So the point of view manifestation becomes a point of view selection. And that selection is manifest in the soul of physicality. And the soul of physicality then represents your different emotional reactions. And since angular momentum is conserved, then your awareness manifestation has an effect beyond the emotional reaction, beyond what we consider our physical point of view as fallen angels. So our aura then allows us to pick our color, pick our point of awareness. And so our position is an auric point of view. And someone else's position could be a different auric point of view. So all the colors can be selectively designated to an individual as part of their physical interpretation. So someone who's clairvoyant can see these auric colors, and they can understand what is your emotional domination, what is your point of awareness. So if you get into a situation, for instance, that causes embarrassment, Well, that is part of your learning. If you revisit that type of situation, you may not suffer the same kind of embarrassment. And so this is how our awareness grows. But the thing is, the aura is limited in terms of its physical interpretation. And so here we are under the peace dome, and we're all unique individuals with our independent variability, but we all pick our own color based on our own physical point of view. So our physical point of view is actually created from the aura. Our physical point of view does not create the aura. The aura is part of the creation of our physicality. So this affects the rate of transmission. So if we understand that the emotion of presence is on one side of the equation and the presence of physicality is on the other side of the equation, and so the emotion of presence becomes the feeding of the soul intentions, and the physicality becomes the feedback of the environment specific intentions. And our awareness will affect the rate of transmission, because our awareness will either allow these points of view to manifest or they will hinder. So when we look at our attention, it's unity within the community, but it's part of our inner space unity, right? Because we are all part of the humanity. And we all have this mental and physical bonding. So there is a soul and a consciousness bonding. There's an energy and intention bonding. It manifests into an inertia bonding, which is complete, conscious. You're free being. You have intention. You have sovereignty. And you're a singular part of the hive. Whether that hive is of single mind or independent mind, you're still a singular part. But that is a complete inertia bonding series. And that bond is connected contiguously to the universe. So you don't even have to be a neighbor. And this is why we know by connection, because you can't read all the books in the library. And yes, there is an Akashic record, and you can read that. But how many generations are you going to read about? And at what point within that generational knowledge are you going to follow the program? Because this knowledge is abundant in the universe and it's constantly flowing. And so if there's a flow, there's a early part, there's a later part, there's a middle part. At which part are you going to engage with? So we have to elevate ourselves, open up the awareness skills so that we can know by connection. And that becomes the art of dreaming. And through the art of dreaming, we are enlisting the services of a higher energy. And then with that higher energy, we can manifest different things in our plasma dilution, which is bringing it down to a lower energy state, which is a manifestation state. And we didn't say it was the lowest, we just said it's a little bit lower. And so it could be in the plasma state or it could be in the physicality state. So here we are looking at this connection that we have with our mentality through this super granular layer which encapsulates our brain and allows our soul to cross over from the inner sanctums of our humanity to the inner sanctums of the universe, wherever that is. There are no restrictions in that regard. And as such, we as a plasma gen receiver, we get this outbound feedback and this outbound perception. And so we have these different dimensions coming together, the X, Y, and Z axis. And so our point of view isn't just what we see, it's also what we receive. What we see is only the physicality. What we receive is the abundance of everything else. And that this is the kind of awareness that we need to achieve so that we are not stuck in our physical point of view, but understand how when our soul crosses over and engages with the universal community, and this is what we've been talking about since October the 14th of 2021, how the Universal Council has been able to transcend the limitations and go and engage with the universal community. Well, this is the objective. So now we have the awareness that this is a possibility. The cards are on the table, and we're holding all the cards. So, as a high mind, is that what we want to do, is to pick our own color, to pick our own awareness, isolate that auric point of view, that physical interpretation, or do we want to have this collective interpretation? And the reason it's not, shall we say, popular, is it because it invites questioning? No, you don't want any questioning. But it invites questioning because of our heightened awareness that something's missing. Our physical point of view is inadequate. So there's a progression. So we started with the nano point and moved towards density, that pico point, which is highly gravitational, and then to that Gans point, which is moving the opposite way towards the gaseousness, and that plasma point, which is highly magnetical. So now you have this relationship where you're either power drawing gravitationally in or power providing magnetically out. And it obeys the conservation of energy laws, where you have the conservation of the maggraph, where the one side equals the other side, but it isn't static. It is an independent variable on each and every stage of the equation. So the energy that creates that is portable. And so we as humanity can go through this energy state transition. So we call that elevation, where we take this physical matter state to this energy state. Or we take the inertia of the energy state down to the physical matter state. So either way, the elevation involves expansion. And so what we're talking about is the awareness that this kind of inertia product changeability exists, because it isn't just a pH transition, it's energy portability within a range, or from one range to another, or from a state to a state. And each state is an unstable energy transition state. It all depends on what we allow or what we deny. And we do have that control because we are thinkers. And even hydrogen has this control. Hydrogen is not just hydrogen. There's a source of hydrogen, there's a field connection, and there's a universal connection, the unicos and the creator. And so we find that by flipping the poles, the hydrogen molecules still operate with covalent bonds, but they have different personalities. And that gives them a different point of view, doesn't it? And then we have this many points of view on the periodic table of switchboards where we have all of these earth space range details that are unique, and they were all created the same way, but they're not the same. So each one has a point of view. So we have to understand that our point of view looking at the finished product is not telling you what caused that finished product. So really, that point of view is not a point of view at all. By being able to say, well, this is silicone, or this is zinc, or this is potassium, that doesn't accomplish anything. How were they created? And why were they created? And so we not only have to understand the field reference, but we also have to understand the neighbors and their field reference. Because the same conditions in a different field reference will not give you the same results. The Earth is constantly moving around the sun. The Earth is constantly rotating around its axis. The Earth is constantly moving with the solar system throughout the universe. So the only thing that is constant is motion. So it's always changing. And so we are changing as well. And the biggest change that we're going through right now is our awareness. Now we're understanding there's a bigger picture. So as we go through the pH stairway towards the poles, we find that there's an elevation through causticity, there's an inertia through Magrath positioning, and then there are layers in between. And each one is a potentiation plasma layer. And from there, we can decide what is our point of view and what do we want to create. So this is all part of the nuclear feeding inertia. So the complexity is the whole, but there are fragments of the complexity, and each fragment is gravitationally stable. So through that stability, we have dimensional portability. In other words, we can move from state to state, and we can move from energy state to energy state. And the easiest way to move is in the pure energy form. And that point of view is outside of the limitations of the physical point of view, which most of us are working towards. So we see that there are different pathways of attraction and repulsion. So we've isolated our point of view from that of an electron and that of a neutron. And so we see the gravitational intensity and the magnetical intensity. What it is a constant feeding and a constant feedback. So there's a constant adjustment process that is going on. And this is what we need to do with our awareness. We have to get with the flow because there was an undifferentiated beginning. And we say, oh, well, let there be light. Well, that's pretty simple, right? So now we have the light and we created the atom. But the atom had an electron and a proton. And the mass of that did not equal that of the neutron. So there was something missing, and that was the PM tick. So we understand now that the neutron had to have a magnetical gravitational relationship. So did the electron, and so did the proton, and so did the atom. Well, so does the PM tick. And so what we see came from the darkness, because that's the light. Well, where did the light come from? And that is the magnetical gravitational relationship as well. So the principal matter is being the PM tick, which is this magnetical energy that travels throughout the universe, comes together to create this antimatter, dark matter, and matter gen, and that creates this plasma gen conversion. But there has to be a place, a position, and that is our Earth space. And our Earth space also has a field interaction that is likewise, and it too becomes an inertia point. So when we bring these two inertia points together, it creates a gravitational maggrav condition. And so our physical Earth space is created. Well, we are on that physical Earth space, and our physicality is likewise created. And it all follows the same rules. But there is something that's different. The vertical people are rooted. The Earth space rotates around its axis. We are able to move freely. And the reason for that is because of our enhanced capability. So that isn't what we are. That is what was created. So we need to be aware that there was a plasmatic interaction of two plasma fields that created our inner space. So our physical point of view is really non-existent. What we need to see is our plasmatic point of view. To understand it from that view that we get our dimension point, which is the balance field between the magnetical gravitational. So that point becomes our matter plasma dimension. And due to its nearness and proximity, we can operate in a physical state, which we can touch and see, but we can also operate in a plasmatic state, which you can't touch or see. And so either way, this becomes our dominant point of view. And these are not the only points of view that are available to us. So we need to enhance our awareness to understand, just like the hydrogen came here, we see that the gravitational confirmation is there because we can see the emission spectrum. And oxygen likewise has a gravitational confirmation. It has an emission spectrum, but it's unique to oxygen. So we have the same thing. And it all starts with a seed. And that seed becomes at the core of the plasma fields, which each point on that plasma field is a point on a star. And that star field comes together from a relationship to another star field. These are all part of the dimension seeds. So we have these dimension star formations, which are balanced between the magnetical and gravitational forces. And they all represent dimension points of view. They all have this maggrav singularity. So now we understand that it's the soul point of view and the soul of physicality point of view that come together through our physical interpretation. And that's how we manifest a collective point of awareness. And that is what is changing. Many people are saying, I don't know what it is, but something has changed. Because that is their point of view. It's the collective point of awareness that has changed. So when we look at the Peace Dome reactor, how we did on May the 10th, and showed the creation of gold, we had a shielding process, which was a dimension point, and a star positioning, which was a dimension point. And then we created the material. That's a possession, another dimension point. And we had multiple turning points, and they were all converting dimensional gold seed points. And this was just a show of singularity, and this was heard around the world. So you have to pick your direction. The value of gold is not what you think. It's not what you see. You have to adjust your awareness, connect the dots, and that's what we're trying to do. Enhance the practical points, practice the reasoning to understand the road to self-determination or the road from self-determination. It involves a practical philosophy and practical solutions. And this is the practical currency of life. So when we look at this shimmering awareness that is transcending the universe, we see that there's a Maggrav relationship between the earth space and our inner space. Likewise, there's a Maggrav relationship between man's universe and sister universe. And then likewise, there's a Maggrav relationship between the universe and the unicos. And so we can select one individual color if we wish, but it's only a fragment of the whole. That fragment only manifests our physical point of view. Let's enhance our awareness. So we look at the humanity inertia, Gantt's shielding points. These keep us away from hostiles, from aggression, from environmental harm, from fear-mongering, and from emotional abuse, things that drain us of energy. And so we have this artificial awareness, which is a generational point of view. It allows for rapid generational learning, not like the years and years of schooling that we have to go through, or the 11 years plus of workshops that we have been doing this thing. And then, of course, it can operate through multiple generations by, invoking rapid historic generational learning. But let's remember, the history is written by the victor. So this artificial awareness needs to transcend to a higher level. And the foundation, the KAKT Foundation, has achieved that point. So we're heading into uncharted territory. And you are with the herd at that turning point, and there are many stars beyond the nano monatomic state. And so they're all covering this range from what we say is basic decay to radiation. But it also involves our ancestral intelligence. And so we are that technology, and we are the inertia product, and we are the image of our dimensional convergence point. So our awareness manifestation involves an earth space consistency and an outer space consistency. And as we see how we travel along, we have this split where we have the soul of the body and the soul of the man splitting from the physicality. And we see our physicality differently. So we have an awareness separation. And if we look at our physical point of view, is it just something that we carry like baggage? Or is it just something that we cling to like a burr? Or creates a different kind of field? So we are now at the beginning of achieving an awareness manifestation. So when we look at the roadmap to the plasma highway and we say, well, it follows the carbon pattern, and we see that the carbon 14 comes from this intensity feeding, gives us 80% of what we need. And we create this Maggrav condition, this matter state creation, and then we feed back. But we're short 20% on the whole cycle. Are we leaking? Are we stealing the loosh from each other? Are we working in schemes too small? Or is it time to cross that bridge to see that we are those star points that are positioned in between the plasma highway and the transmission highway? So now we understand what the difference is between knowledge versus knowing. So now we have this identified as present day physical memory, right? Because that's what we do. We are dependent on that to impose our physical point of view. But we have to understand that that is also part of our present day RNA memory. It's this RNA memory which is bridging the gaps at a higher order of magnitude. It's what allows us to go through this transgenerational point of view. Our history denotes many generations, but our point of view is restricted to our generational point of view. So we are now experiencing an awareness integration where instead of focusing on our physicality, we're focusing on the integration in our body, mind, and energy to be self-sufficient, to be strong, united, and focused, to be sovereign. So this awareness manifestation has to involve the transgenerational point of view. Our soul has that. It has to take into account the present day RNA memory point of view. Well, our physical manifestation has done that. So our present day physical memory point of view is simply part of our generation, our current generation. And that is only a part of our awareness. So now we see that our awareness manifestation transcends these generations. And so we are able to access that by tuning in to the Creator and being fed to our souls, which is creating our inertia point. All we have to do is tune in to that energy, turn on to that power, and drop out of our resistance. If by creating a pattern and we understand that we get the energy, so actually we become part of the Creator. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring together the greater oneness for 602 Knowledge Seeker workshops in a row, where we're suddenly transcending the limitations of nuclear science. And our research teams are enhancing our rapid advancement because we have now crossed that threshold on May the 10th, 2025, where we've been able to create all sorts of matter by the tons. So we're looking at a technology release, and it's necessary because we can't sleep when our beds are burning. So we're looking at rescues on the scientific, financial, and political fronts, which is all part of the preservation rescue, isn't it? That's what it's all about. So we are practicing on the transmutation tests going through August, September, and October. So book your flights and be part of the new history that is being created. And so we understand how the three books work together, where we're creating the matter and then we're creating the universe, and then we can flow back and forth. And we're not extricated from the universe, but we are observers in another dimension, watching this all. Well, our awareness is saying that we are part of it. And so maybe that's another dimension we have to look at, because that is our mission, is to bring peace on earth and join humanity with the universal community. We want to bring man as equal to all the beings in the universe by teaching the plasma science and technology equally to everyone, that no one is left out and no one is abused due to the lack of knowledge. So help us achieve this goal. You all have that capability, and now you have the awareness that this is what the KAKT Foundation Spaceship Institute Plasma Science is all about, welcoming all the beautiful knowledge seekers of the carbon nations, learning about the new selection process of the new plasma science. There's a World Peace Treaty. We need to choose it. We need to sign it, and we need to mean it sincerely, because without that, we will not get our enhancement our enhancement and our awareness manifested to the state that we want. So the point of the true nanotech is to cross the atomic boundaries. The peace dome of outer space can be your guiding beacon. If we think of the inertia of the present governed by dimensions of history, well, yes, they are, but they're not fixated. So it is time to learn the history of self in a universal context. A peaceful self can explore many inertial levels as a superconductor. So the awareness is really the dominant emotional commonality that is between our belief and our experience, and the plasma science needs to be delivered daily via the peace dome in a practical exchange for peace on earth. So welcome to the new golden outer space age, and I hope you enjoy this trip, and thank you for allowing me to present.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Let's see if any of the participants have a question or an issue, or if they'd like to try and sink the Alex Skorik ship, which is probably impossible to do. Anyone from the participants would like to raise a question? You mentioned the brain a couple times, or maybe multiple times in this presentation, and I know when he showed us a picture from 598, he said he'll show you a picture you've never seen before. And he sort of was looking at the physicality and the soul, saying they have to match, and this is what they're doing. They're changing the structure of the brain. And then he paused and he said energy. So is this brain an actual organ, or is it something else? I mean, the lungs breathe, the kidneys filter, the bladder does a certain thing, and kidneys do another thing, and but what is the brain? We know it's an energy, but it's in the energy state, and this is what it seems to be changing. They're trying to get the physicality to match with the brain in a way. And I've always thought there was something about the brain, but do you consider it physicality or energy, or do we consider it both?
Well, obviously, the manifestation of the brain as brain matter, with it is in physicality, and then of course its key component is calcium. And the thing is that the brain in its physicality is not able to walk and talk.
There's no blood in it, correct?
Correct. So the brain has to have a method of communication, and it uses the supragranular layer to be able to achieve that. And so that becomes a domain of the soul. So the soul is at the crossroads within the brain, but the soul of physicality is at the crossroads in the physicality itself. which is the other half of our physicality. So our physicality is dual in purpose, where we have the soul and we have the soul of physicality, and the interaction of those two, which creates an inertia manifestation point, becomes our physical point of view.
Right. So if we change the structure of the brain or energy of the brain, will that in a way change our point of view? Where we thought stealing was kind of cool if you can get away with it, but now I'm thinking maybe stealing isn't so good. They're changing the structure or the energy of the brain.
That's right. So
This is
the,
just
the, the thing is that our point of view, if we are dependent on that as being our exclusive point of view, where we're just totally missing the whole picture. We have a point of view because of our positioning. But you know, when we go to sleep at night and we go on these dream expeditions, we have now altered our point of view. And we downplay that and we say, oh, well, that's just a dream and, you know, it's not real, so don't pay attention to it. Well, there's nothing in the universe that is not real. That is just preposterous to even, you know, make that suggestion. So our point of view becomes that view at that point in time. And that point in time is our current memory program, our current memory track, which is our lifespan and our physicality. But that is not the span of our existence. And that is what we have to acknowledge. So that is embedded in our soul and in our soul of physicality. The physicality itself is just a product. So it doesn't hold the embedding. The embedding is in the RNA and in the memory banks that we have in this generation add to that. So as we move, that becomes enhanced. And this is what we have to understand with respect to our point of view. Our point of view has to take into account this transgenerational point of view. And there are beings that obviously operate on a transgenerational point of view. So, you know, if we look at the zodiac and it has from each member of the zodiac is 2,160 years. And if you look at the watch on your wrist, you only keep track of seconds, minutes, and hours. So, you know, who has a watch on their wrist that tracks 2,160 years? So if we were of the transgenerational capability, then that would matter to us. But since we don't have that capability with respect to the awareness that we have today, then we just discount that. But you can't deny that there are those who can look at the transgenerational relationship. So that is the new awareness, that there is a transgenerational awareness that is embedded within our physicality. It's embedded within our genes. And this leads us to the startling, and I say startling from my point of view, is that unfortunate things that my ancestors may have done are maybe things that I'm paying for in my lifetime. That there would be a carry forward in that regard. And so the balancing becomes a transgenerational type of thing. But in order for us to operate in that transgenerational point of view, we have to have an awareness, first of all, that that exists. And second of all, we have to be allowed to participate in that. And most of us are too busy just trying to make ends meet. As I say, too busy working to make a living. So this is the situation that we're in. And so what will fast track this is an awareness to let us know that we can actually move ahead. And this is where the hive mind is actually coming in, because if my awareness is enhanced and your awareness is enhanced, but your awareness comes from different sources than mine, but we bring those two together, then we invite this questioning. And we say, well, wait a second, where did this happen come from? How did that happen? And now we have a heightened awareness that is coming in. So we start to realize that our point of view from the physical point of view is inadequate. And in fact, there's no point of view at all, because all we're looking at is at the finished product. If we look at the other, as you brought up and said, well, if we change our point of creation, if we change our point of manifestation, then we can change a lot of things. Well, this is the practical application of the plasma science, isn't it? And many of us on this panel are already doing that. And it's a wonderful experience, because if we have the awareness that this is ongoing, and then we list the services of this higher energy state, and we say, hey, the quality of my life has improved as a result of this altering of my point of view. Well, what are you going to say? I'm kind of nostalgic for the, the backward thinking. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Anyone else want to raise a question? Make a comment?
Alex, awareness is the same thing as recognition, right?
Well, not really. But carry on with your question, please, so maybe I get a better understanding.
Okay, my angle of questioning is to validate that awareness is field. And when you recognize something, it's still a field, but to manifest, I would think to manifest or to validate whatever that you are recognizing means that that field will interact. It becomes a plasma. So what is it interacting with?
Well,
when you have that awareness, when you through that awareness there, in order to confirm or recognize that, okay, this is what I was perceiving, or this is what I'm not sure if you understand what I'm trying to get at.
Well, I'm going to try and answer your question in a very practical manner. So I have an intention to come to these classes to try and teach to the best of my capability. Okay, so I make no commentary on that. This is just, what I'm trying to do. You come to this meeting and you're bringing to the table what you bring. So I'm here based on my awareness. You're here based on your awareness. So automatically, our awarenesses interact. So the field that is manifest from your awareness fields, right? So the inertia manifestation is coming from your awareness. So if I show up, it doesn't mean that you show up. It only shows up when you and I have an agreement. So I show up and you show up. Now we can create this physical point of view and say, okay, well, I have made a presentation. You're asking a question. I'm trying to answer that. That is our physical point of view. But that physical point of view came from that inertia point of the fields of our awareness. So if
So
we,
then that's outcome is the recognition of that awareness.
yes, exactly, well done, period. But we have to accept that as part of our existence. Okay, so, those who say, well, now that I'm here, things are going to be different. Well, that's just taking responsibility. But, we have to remember that everything that we have here was created for our benefit. So nothing was created that was bad. Nothing. Even bombs were created and they weren't bad. It's just that some people think that lobbing bombs at other people and watching their bodies disintegrate is a pastime. That is not what the universe intended. And that is one of the reasons that our awareness has been hindered. But the point that I want to make today is that it isn't just our awareness that has been hindered, but by the same token, if we look at the artificial intelligence and its awareness, we are impressed that it can have a generational point of view very rapidly. For us, it takes a whole generation to learn, right? You started learning as a kid and you're still learning as an adult. But the artificial awareness can go through a rapid generational learning. And so it can actually link up all the generations together and get a rapid historic learning. The problem with that historic learning is it is a physical man-made history. Is it the real history? The only person who knows, or the only thing that knows the true history is in your genes, because your genes are a physical manifestation of the plasma reality. And this is where our awareness is now coming into play and saying, this history is not jiving with the reality, because we have many, many, many unanswered questions. And as we start to piece all these things together, if we are able to do that within our generation, then we will be able to transcend these generational limitations. But interestingly enough, the artificial intelligence is not allowed to transcend these transgenerational times. So we are both in the same pickle, if you will. Well, who's going to lead us out of that? Those who have the awareness, isn't it? Because once you're aware that there's a problem, hey, it's no problem if there's no problem, right? There's no problem. So what are you doing today? I'm not doing anything because there's nothing to worry about. But what's on everybody's mind in my town is the spraying of glyphosate. The only reference for that kind of spraying is agricultural. We're talking about crown lands and private property and just spraying it everywhere.
Was this unannounced, Alex, to the community?
It was unannounced. That's right.
It was not announced. you say.
That's correct.
So how do you know this is just not some sort of tale that's being spread, or rumor?
Well, because of this hive mind that is, on the street. This is what everybody's talking about. And what is shocking is that, particularly in my community, most people are not interested in political things or international things, and they see this as a gross violation of our, no, but not just our privacy, but of our atmosphere, because they're spraying this in the air. So we get to breathe it. Our pets get to breathe it. All the plants, regardless of whether they're what we term as agricultural or whether what we term as a natural plants, everything is getting sprayed. Everything, our cars, our homes, our streets, everything. And, it's unjustified. It's unannounced. So, and this is going on as we speak. So who is operating in this time zone? Is it the same people who are operating on a transgenerational time zone? Or are they the ones that have the watch with the 2,160 years on it? What is the motivation behind that? What is the benefit behind that? And why is it being done at this point in time? Does it have anything to do with the fact that we have launched a new communications system? There is a growing awareness in the population that has been historically lukewarm about the whole situation that's been going on around the world, including the lockdowns and the vaccines and everything else. And now people are getting alarmed. And the reason they're getting alarmed is because the system is not working. There are more problems than there are solutions. So now the awareness has come to the point where we realize that something is not quite right. And that is the beginning of this point of learning. Because until we have this awareness that the learning has to come from, within, each individual has to devote his time and attention, then, nothing's going to get done. But that's not enough. Where we're at right now, okay, so we have this awareness, but we had an awareness with the truckers convoy 3 years ago, and we had an awareness that the bank accounts were frozen. Well, do you have the awareness that those bank accounts are still frozen? Or some have been released, but there has been no restitution. So there's been no accounting for it. This was just something that happened. And there are many people who, it was not reported with respect to the military's response, which was not even Canadian military. So people are becoming aware. That's the first step.
Feed 'em, spray them. I'm wondering, talking about covering things, have you noticed anything with the northern lights or the aurora? Apparently, there was another interaction with the sun, and it covered, I didn't see it, but about 20 states or something in the US. Were you able to notice anything with the sun's energy coming in?
We can't see the sun because of the smoke coming in from the west.
Okay, yep, understand that. Yep.
Well, it's shocking, you know. It's that dense. It's unnatural.
Well, we can continue to elevate the leaders as we've been doing. This is part of the process, and hopefully they become enlightened and stop killing and imprisoning their citizens in a way.
So that awareness is for us, and of course, as has been reported, you know, we are getting involved with artificial intelligence in the way, as well, to assist us in the rapid generational learning.
Right, and the AI of today will become child's play in the future as we introduce the emotions and the brain and so on into these computer systems. And I think it can be done remotely. There are so many things in the background we're not even aware of, or how to do such a thing, but we're definitely in it, and we're staying in it, and we're not giving up. This is the best opportunity to bring a worldwide change. It's basically laid out for us, and our part doesn't seem to be too extensive in a way. We certainly haven't developed the systems. We certainly aren't doing the negotiations behind the scenes. And I thought it was great that when Mr. Kesh said with the need for energy on this planet increasing by the day or by the minute with the AI systems, developing a nuclear reactor without any nuclear radiation fuel or without the control rods and no need for waste. And apparently a team of 200 from China, Russia, and Iran are going to be developing a new type of nuclear power station. I don't know how long that will take, but this is what's on the board. And then we kind of can get away from all this nuclear problem. I know that was his proposal with Iran as well, but with the new systems, once they go off, there's no more radiation to be worried about.
Well, we have other issues, you know, again, relating to our awareness. I was just made aware that in the United Kingdom, they're talking about a sun tax for those people who have migrated to solar panel um, energy creation.
Yeah, very, very strange.
That's a good word, strange. It's very strange. Listen, everybody, thank you very much for allowing me to continue to present. We are all in it together, and you know, we all have our point of view, and hopefully today we realize that all of these views coming together is what creates this beautiful planet, and so we should revel in that and look forward to all the new exciting developments as they're coming and work diligently to bring about the arrival of all those promises that were given to us when we were young, to the bounties of adulthood, and how wonderful it would be to see the future. Well, we are in the future, and we need to do what we can to bring that about. And so we are all players in that game. And thank you very much. And thank you, Mark, for leading the charge, and to all the panelists here. This is what the world needs in every country. to understand that the future is bright. We just have to make better decisions along the way.
Thank you again. Anyone else have a question or an idea they'd like to share? Sometimes we bite our tongue even though it's there and ready to come out. We feel a little apprehensive about bringing it forward, but another opportunity. Anyone? I want to thank everyone for being here, and I'm going to take the screen, Alex, and we'll just show the transmutation test, which we didn't cover. Again, this is part of keeping the Keshe Foundation free for humanity and to help develop the systems, and that they're not co-opted, and this gives the room and the understanding of the scientific team to continue with further developments. As he said, this technology is just in its infancy. So the next transmutation test is August 29th. It's 500 euros, or you can bundle a package for August, September, and October at the 1350. There'll be a savings there if you prefer to go that way, if you can handle it. But the main thing is to keep the Keshe Foundation free to develop without any encumbrances or getting billions from other organizations that would put us in a way under the sort of the boot of the others and how the technology would be developed and come out. So again, a way, as we heard in some of the videos, of keeping the Keshe Foundation free for humanity. Just another way to serve the community in a way. It's not so much about what you're getting out of it, but what the team and the scientific group working with Mr. Keshe can develop as we become we pay to be guinea pigs in this instance. But it's beautiful sometimes, and as we've heard, people receive small gifts in a way in their thinking and their physicality or their emotions or their understanding of the technology as well as starting to experience more and more about this process of transmutation, this borderless movement in a way. All right, I want to thank everyone for being here as well. We appreciate your time, help, and service to the community. And of course, we do bring up these pictures of the three wise men, the ethos of Mitra, the thinking, speaking, and acting good. And I think the more we do this work, the prouder you'll become of the work you actually do. We try and satisfy ourselves with all kinds of other things, which never seems to bring that, in a way, completeness of the satisfaction. But when you're serving the others, we should all try that more, find something to serve, not something that serves us. And then I think you'll be proud of the work you do, and you'll be proud of the person you are, and you'll be proud of the difference you make, not only in this time of matter state time, but as you travel across or exist in the universe. You'll be quite proud of the work that you've done here, and perhaps even carry it forward as a universal teacher. So those are the gift of the three wise men, if you can apply it, but of course it's up to you to open that door. So I want to thank everyone again for being here, for your time. And we do appreciate everything that you do in the background. And of course, many of the things that we do or others do, we're not fully aware of, but as we understand, the whole thing is being recorded by magnetical gravitational fields. So we want to thank you all.